Hello family, my name is Chris, I am your home gamer dad, and it's about time that we take a look at some foot soldiers. These are your basic grunts that are sent down to basically give the team a warm-up before the monster of the week gets there. Easily defeated, easily handled, but of course, when you have a whole bunch from to deal with, it gets a little crazy. So, for this Power Rangers Heroes of the Grid Villains Breakdown, I'll be looking at some of the most famous foot soldiers out there, the Putty Patrol. And the Tengas, because they appeared in MMPR as well. Yeah, so if you know anything at all about Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, then the Putty Patrol would be the #1 thing that you recognize hands down right off the bat. They're in pretty much every episode of the series from season 1 all the way through season 2. There are a few of them that appear in season 3 as well, but eventually the Tengas do take over as the standard foot soldiers for each episode. And exactly, it's what they do. They go down, they just cause a little bit of havoc, a little bit of craziness and whatnot in order to get the Rangers all prepped up and ready for the big fight and whatnot, and then it just goes from there. However, there have been a few instances where the foot soldiers became a little bit more for the Rangers than they were expecting, and as always, the more of these guys that come together, the harder that they are, especially the Tengas. If there's a lot of Tengas there, better watch out. Gotta watch those Tengas, watch those Tengas, watch those Tengas fly. Foot soldiers are a huge part to the Heroes of the Grid board game, so where it is that you can find all of these guys for your game, well, if you happen to have the standard core set, the first thing that was ever released with just Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, Rita, her monsters, things along that ways, you'll be able to get the basic putties and the super putties within that. Both of these styles of foot soldiers are there. You're going to get a bunch of minis for each of them, and each putty will have 2 locations connected to it. I'll talk about locations once I get to it. In addition to that, your Z-Putties and your Tengas are found within the Kickstarter big box set. So that you'll find Lord Zed, his minions, if you're doing the Kickstarter box, the green candle with Green Ranger Tommy, white light with White Ranger Tommy, you know, a bunch of different things along that ways. Now, I'm actually going to be talking about a 5th putty, which actually appears within the game as well, the Chaos Putties. These are a Boom comic book exclusive style of putty. These were kind of like a supercharge for Zed, but I'll talk about that a little bit more. It's only cards, it's no figures, and you can find them within Merciless Minions pack #1 with the cogs, and I forget what else was in that particular set, but you see it on the screen right there anyway. So if you want to get the cards for the Chaos Putties, that's where you're going to find them. They kind of just replace the cards for any other putty you have. You would just use the model in place of it, and then of course the locations and whatnot. So with that, there you have it. Let's go ahead and jump on in. Enough chit-chatting about this. It's time to call in the Putty Patrol. Here we go. Rita's Clay Army Putty Patrollers. The very first foot soldier class enemy the Power Rangers ever fought, the Putty Patrol is made up of mass-produced monster clay enemies from Finster's workshop. Able to pump out dozens of these brainless drones in no time, the Putty Patrol may not be strong individually, but can overwhelm unsuspecting Rangers before they know it. With super strength, limited intelligence, but fierce battle prowess, never underestimate the power of a putty. Putty Patrollers within Power Rangers Heroes of the Grid are foot soldier class enemies, meaning that each card that is dealt out on the field relates to one of these particular models in that particular location. You defeat that card, you defeat that model, and it goes towards the experience board, towards more Zords, and eventually the Megazord. The Putty Patrol is linked to 2 specific locations. First, Angel Grove Park, max 6 figures on this location. The advanced side ability is at the end of each round, move 1 foot soldier from this location to the next location clockwise that is not panicked. The other location is Ernie's Juice Bar, maximum 5 characters on this location before it panics. Its special ability is when a Ranger in this location performs a recover action, they may recover cards with a total of up to 9 shields instead of 6. So the last one was a negative effect, this is the positive. Within the Putty Patrol's deck, you'll find 5 cards that have 2 health on them and 5 cards that have 3 health on them. And the keyword breakdown is 5 of the cards are blank, no keywords at all, 3 of them have the guard keyword, and 2 have passive. Thank you for letting me do my bad putty impression. I'm sure anybody out there that's familiar with them has tried to imitate them at one point in their life. Whether you do it by yourself or in a group of people, it's all on you. But hey, we're having fun. We're enjoying ourselves, right? How about we do ourselves a leaping attack? 2 health, deal 3 damage. Absolutely no passive on this as well. We're starting off strong, everybody, with a level 1 threat. I think this is the first level 1 threat that I've given to any of my villain cards that I've talked about. And to be honest with you, it's you don't need this. There's 3 of these within their deck, does 3 damage. In like originally when this was first released, again, as I mentioned before, with very, very early releases for this game, 3 damage wasn't great, but it was also wasn't the worst thing in the world. Nowadays, you have cards out there that reduce it by 2, by 3, completely negating it, doing counterattacks, things along that ways. 3 damage is absolutely nothing nowadays with the Rangers that are out there. So when you see this on the field, because it has no keywords on it or whatever, it's not guarding anything, it's not protecting anything or whatnot, you might as well just leave it for later. It only has 2 health, so it go down like that. It's exactly what it should be, and that is a simple card to just kind of annoy you a little bit, but really is there to help you work towards your goal of your next Zord. Speaking of which, cannon fodder. Again, this is exactly what they are. 3 health, guard keyword, deal 2 damage. Again, this is a level 1. This is a level 1 threat level card for this because 2 damage is even easier to block. And if you manage to block any bit of that, you're almost not going to be losing a card in defense. It's a guard card, so you can be able to attack it easily. Yes, it has 3 health, so you have to do a little bit more to it. But as far as foot soldiers go, 2, 3 health is pretty much the norm. So if you're going at this, you're going at this with like a 3 dice attack or something that does a little bit more guaranteed damage or some type of spread damage on it in order to be able to get rid of as many of these guys as possible. And because this has a guard, this is easily taken care of. This is not on your priority list at all, except maybe if it's guarding something you need to get rid of. Maybe I should do well, it's still threat level 1, but a little bit higher of priority than the last card because you don't want it guarding things. You want it out of there. So this way you can start nailing the worst cards of the bunch. Something like Swarm Attack, for example. We're going to see a lot of this card throughout the course of this particular video. 3 health, deal 1 damage, increase this damage by 1 for each foot soldier in this location. I'm giving this a threat level of 3, and every swarm attack going forward is going to have a threat level of 3 because it's right there in the middle of the grading system. This card can either be extremely devastating or extremely easy. So it's 1 damage plus 1 for each foot soldier. So if it's on the field, there has to be a foot soldier on it in order to pull the card. So at the least, swarm attack is doing 2 damage to a ranger. But at most, if you have something that has like a 6 max limit, then this is doing 7 damage to a ranger, which is awful. It's just like a horrible, horrible thing to have to deal with. Swarm Attack is one of those cards that once it hits the field and everyone sees it, they're like, all right, so how are we going to get around this? How are we going to get there? Let's kill this guy to reduce it. You know, there's a lot of planning and figuring out that goes into Swarm Attack that goes before the card even triggers to reduce the damage as low as you can, or even just get rid of it outright. So I think a 3 is a fair threat level for all swarm attacks, just because they could fall at any point on the spectrum. And now we're on possibly the worst card ever for foot soldiers, Flanking. 2 health, passive. While this card is in play, each time another enemy card deals damage, increase that damage by 1. Guys, this is the only one you're going to see like this throughout the course of this remaining video. This is a threat level of 5. I have gone up against monsters that had 2 flankings on the field, and if they have multiple attacks, each flanking triggers. So just take any creature that has multiple attacks. Goldar has multiple attacks. Pumpkin Raptor has multiple attacks. Anything that has multiple attacks will constantly go up more and more and more because of flanking. This applies to monsters, this applies to bosses, this applies to other foot soldiers. And whereas flanking doesn't get a turn, it just resolves and that's it. It could be on the field long enough to really put a devastating hit on the Ranger team because it boosts whatever power the other monster or whatever the boss or whatever it is that you're fighting. Get rid of flanking. Flanking is terrible. I hate it. It is the worst of all the cards. But that's also saying something, because if this is the worst of it, the rest of the cards aren't really so bad. Finster's menacing upgrade, Super Putty Patrollers. Made from an upgraded clay developed by Finster, the Super Putties are pretty much a super powered version of the original, given a stone ball for a hand and maybe a sword arm. In the show, they did have those same weapons, but were stronger and more durable than the original putties, though they didn't visually look any different. Both the show and comic book versions have a new ability. When divided, the Super Putty can regrow into more copies of itself, making a tough enemy twice as hard to defeat. Super Putties are foot soldier class enemies within Power Rangers Heroes of the Grid, meaning each one of the figures at a location is tied to a card. Defeating that card defeats the enemy and increases the experience on the Power Rangers power board. The Super Putties have 2 locations tied to them. The first one is the Industrial District, with a max of 6 figures at this location before it panics. Its advanced side special ability is at the start of each battle in this location, each ranger may draw 1 card, then place 1 card from their hand back on top of their deck, a positive effect. The second location is Angel Grove High, maximum 5 figures on this location before it panics. The special ability for Angel Grove High, each ranger in this location has their maximum hand size reduced by 2. Excess cards are immediately discarded. I believe this means that your maximum hand limit goes from 5 to 3, so you can't have any more than 3 cards, but guys, just verify that for me down in the comment section below. Out of the 10 cards within the Super Putty deck, 5 of them are 2 health, 5 of them are 3 health, and keywords break down to 7 of them being blank, and 3 of them are a combo of fast and guard. I didn't even realize that the Super Putties were in Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. I think it was like episode 39 or something like that from season 1. And again, they looked exactly like the regular putties. They were just stronger and like, oh man, what are we going to do about this? Yada, yada, yada. But I'm surprised I didn't remember that, because that was the first episode that Titanus was introduced in as well. So, anybody out there knows I love Titanus. It's such a great sword. He needs to come back more just for no reason at all. Anyway, let's start off by talking about Engulf, a 2 health Super Putty card with the fast and guard keyword on them. So there are 2 of those within their deck, and this is the only ones that have any type of keywords on them. And this card drains 1 energy. This is a threat level of 2. I generally make these a little bit higher because of a drain, but the problem is that this is the only fast card in their deck, this and the other Engulf, which means that if you draw it, it's going to go to the front of the line and trigger before you even get a chance to do anything. Positive point though, if you're fighting against a monster, it's not going to trigger before otherwise going, but you're still going to have to deal with it being a guard card should it guard a part of the monster that you need to get through. Now, it only has 2 health, so it's not exactly the worst thing to get through, but it's still it's still of an annoyance. It's still of a nuisance, which is exactly what the putties are supposed to be. There in order to make you burn resources and for the monster to come in and wipe your team out. There's actually 3 Engulfs in the deck, and every one of them has those keywords on it, so be ready, because here we go with Regrow, 2 health, no keywords, so any Engulfs will always push this down. If this triggers, deploy 1 Super Putty Patroller to this location. This is a threat level of 3, because you don't want these getting out of control. The thing is, if this creates a Putty Patroller within your location and location is already panicked, it moves to the next location, thus possibly panicking that, thus possibly panicking the entire board, thus possibly losing you the game. That's the issue with Regrow right now, and that's putting more creatures on the board, more fires that you have to put out of sorts, and making you burn your resources faster in order to make sure nothing bad happens. So Regrow can be really obnoxious, really annoying at times if you don't keep it in check. Otherwise, these Super Putty Patrollers are just going to be going and going and going. Next, we have Putty Pummel, which is pretty much their leaping attack, which is also a level 1 threat. 3 health, 3 damage. Okay, cool, whatever. That doesn't bother me much anymore as it used to, because 3 damage is something that I could take care of easily. There are cards out there that I want this to trigger on. Like, sure, come on, bring me that 3 damage so I can play a card in order to gain energy from it and reduce the damage or something along that ways. Or to do some type of counter attack to a monster and kill that, even though this Putty Pubble's coming in here at me. Definitely one that I don't care how long it's on the field, because if it triggers, I've already made a plan to use it to my advantage. And it's definitely something to keep an eye on as well. Not hard, not very difficult at all, way worse within their deck. I mean, honestly, that Engulf and that Regrow are pretty bad. And we also have a Swarm Attack here. Again, I'm going to keep this at a level 3 just for fairness to it all, because it could either be really good or really bad. But deal 1 damage, increases damage by 1 for each foot soldier in this location. Remember, Regrow will continue to increase this power as well until the maximum figure limit is hit. And then, of course, it just makes things more complicated, makes things more annoying for the Rangers, because you're taking down them really fast, and then Regrow puts 1 in, and now Swarm Attack is doing more damage than it should. So keeping this at a level 3 as something that you want to keep an eye on, and if you have the opportunity to take it out, go for it, is something to keep in mind for all Swarm Attacks, which again, we're going to see at least 2 more maybe going forward, something like that, at least 1. Zed's adjustment to the formula. Z-Putty Patrollers. After Lord Zed took over Rita's moon castle, he infused his own power into the Putty Patrol, changing them into his own Z-Putty army. Stronger, faster, and more durable than the Super Putties, the Z-Putties were meant to be the ultimate foot soldier. Except for one catch. Their weak point. The giant Z in the middle of their chest. A solid strike on that point would cause the Z-Putties to explode, defeating these, quote, unbeatable creatures. Z-Putties are foot soldier class enemies within Power Rangers Heroes of the Grid. Just like Putties and Super Putties, the way that you get rid of them is by defeating a card. Each card is linked to a specific figure in a location. For every one you defeat, you gain 1 experience on the power board. The first of the 2 locations that the Z-Putties are linked to is the Power Plant. This has a maximum of 6 figure limit to the location. Its special effect is at the start of each battle in this location, gain 1 energy. That is your positive effect for the 2. The other one is the Dockyard. A maximum of 5 figures can be on this location before it panics. At the start of each battle in this location, drain 1 energy. That is your negative effect for their locations. The Z-Putty deck has 4 2 health cards and 6 3 health cards. And be sure you get that errata pack, because you have this breakdown for keywords. 5 of them are blank, 3 are guard, and 2 are passive. Originally it was 3 blank and 2 fast, but I'll explain what changed in a moment. And that is right now. The Z-Putties started out as extremely broken foot soldiers, or at least like this particular card in its original writing made it very, very hard to deal with and scary to go up against the Z-Putties in general. This is Overwhelm. It is a 2 health card. Deal 2 damage. Skip the next Ranger turn in battle. This is a threat level of 4. Originally, I mean, it would be a threat level of 5 originally, but there wasn't really anything you could do about it. Originally, Overwhelm had the fast keyword on it, which means not only did you lose the first turn, this did 2 damage, and then you lost the second turn without being able to do anything. The errata to this was that they took off the fast keyword, which is fantastic because it still makes this card scary. You still want to get rid of this card as fast as you can, because it's not the damage, it's the skipping of the next Ranger's turn that matters. You only have a certain amount of turns within a battle in order to be able to do something. Taking that away from the Rangers effectively hinders them and prevents them from being able to defeat as many things as they can and gain as much experience as they can. So, Overwhelm, very, very tough, very annoying. There is no Swarm Attack. This is their version of it of sorts, and it's far worse. Next, we have the Z-Putties Achilles heel, the self-destruct. This is such a silly ability that they have. But keep in mind, the Z-Putties were the American version of the Putties. It's completely Americanized and whatnot. And they put it in there. I don't know why they wrote this in for this particular weakness, but it's hysterical. 2 health, passive keyword. While this card is in play, each time a Z-Putty card, including this one, is defeated, deal 2 damage. So every time a card is destroyed boom, everybody gets hit. Well, the person that destroyed it gets hit with 2 damage. Definitely a threat level of 3. That 2 damage can start piling up pretty quickly if you're not really prepared for it, or you don't want to spend the cards in order to reduce that additional damage from here. So get rid of this card. Yes, you take the 2 damage because it explodes in your face, but hey, that's kind of the whole point of the putties. They never really, like, they exploded in the show, but it was never like dangerous for the other Rangers. Here it's dangerous. Here you got to keep an eye out for it and plan around it accordingly so you don't lose too many cards and burn all your resources. Next is the Z Shield, a health of 3 guard keyword, drain 2 energy. I'm going to put this as a threat level of 4. I think I originally wrote it down as a 3, but I'm bumping it up to a 4 because threat level is also related to priority level. Get rid of this card because not only is it guarding things, which is really annoying, you know, when foot soldiers start guarding like monster cards and whatnot, they always guard the monster card that does the worst thing possible that you can't get to. I don't know why it works out that way. I don't know how it works out that way. What a great design from the Renegade team. Guard seems to always guard the cards that you're like, no, I don't want that guarded. And then of course, if it triggers, drain 2 energy. That's awful. That's what you get at the beginning of a round. 2 energy drops into the pool. This just takes it away from you immediately because the Z Shield is like, it's supposed to absorb energy, and then once it's hit, all that energy expels into the body, and that's why it blows up. But still, get rid of it. Make sure it doesn't draw the energy, and of course, drop that guard. And lastly, they have the Fierce Strike. Of course, they're stronger than regular putties. They're putty pummels or whatever it is that they had, where deal 3 damage. The Fierce Strike here is a 3 health, deal 4 damage card. No passives or anything, no keywords, things along that ways. So it's slightly bumped up to a level 2 threat just because it's 1 extra damage. And this also means that at the very least, you're losing 1 card from your deck. Because no matter what, unless you have something, even if you have something that manages to get you 4 shields, you still lose that card anyway, because if shields go down to 0, that goes to your discard pile. So it's just a little bit more annoying because if you have 3 damage or 2 damage, you can manipulate it in a way where you're not losing the card and not being taken out that way. Whereas here, Fierce Strike, you're going to lose the card, at least 1 card, that you need in order to defend. And usually it's a card that you absolutely need because that's the way that luck works in this game sometimes. Zed's Power Unleashed, the Chaos Putties. In the Boom comic series, Zed took empowering the Putty Patrol 1 step further. Using the power of chaos energy, he created the Chaos Putties, a new army of foot soldiers strong enough to take on the Rangers. Led by Putty Prime, who I expect to see in this game at some point, the Chaos Putties nearly took down the Rangers. If it wasn't for their combined powers and teamwork, this new breed of putty would have sent the world into utter chaos. Even though they are stronger, they are still considered foot soldier class enemies within Power Rangers Heroes of the Grid. Each one of the Chaos Putty cards will be tied to a particular figure in the location. You would be the one that actually chooses that figure, but I'll explain that momentarily. Defeat the putty, defeat the card, add 1 experience to the experience board, gain those Zords. Within the Chaos Putty deck, you'll find 5 of them having 2 health, 5 of them having 3 health, and your keyword breakdown are 4 of them are blank, 3 have fast, and 3 are passive. Now you may notice I don't have any figures or anything like that in front of me. That's because the Chaos Putty deck is just that. It is just a deck. There's no locations, there's no location cards, there's no figurines that are tied to these particular cards. What you do then, if you want to play as Chaos Putties, is you choose another minion type and you use their location cards and their locations, but you use the Chaos Putty deck. So it basically just, you could put down a Z-Putty or you could put down a Super Putty, and both of these would represent a Chaos Putty on the field. So this way, whenever you play against them or whenever you choose to draw a card from that, you draw a card from the Chaos Putty deck. So keep that in mind. That's kind of how it works. It's like a swap of sorts, just adding even more customization to this game. All right, let's see what type of chaos these guys throw at us. Erratic Movement, 2 health, passive keyword. While this card is in play, increase the health value of each adjacent enemy card by 1. Definitely a threat level of 3 right here because of the health increase. It is only adjacent, so if you're fighting these guys early and it's just foot soldiers, it's really not that bad, especially if it's already to the left or to the right of the command board. Then at least then, you know, you're doing minimum amount of health increase. But if you're going up against a monster and this thing falls in between, then that would be 3 different cards that each have their health increased by 1, which could be a little annoying at times, because if you have a monster with 4 health and you're ready to go in there and like kill it with something big, or you have a big attack or whatnot, and it just raises that health by 1, that's kind of decreases your chances of beating it. Keep in mind also that the way that the rules are written, once the hit tokens on a card matches the health value of the creature, it's immediately defeated. So if you have something with 2 health that has this card next to it and you did 2 damage to it, but then defeated the erratic movement, the card that had 2 health goes from 3 to 2, the 2 match, it is defeated as well. Next we have Cause Havoc, 2 health, no keywords, drain 1 energy, skip the next ranger turn in battle. Equally as bad as the Z-Putty one. I'm going to make this a threat level of 4. The drainage is terrible. The skipping of the ranger's turn is terrible. The fact that it has no keywords on it at all means that it can be surrounded by guards and hard to like hit and whatnot. So if you can get a way into this, if you can find a way to like bypass guard or get around that, or just take it out as fast as you can, highly recommend that, because you lose a turn in battle, you'll lose momentum, and you lose the chance to utilize your cards the best way possible, because now you just gotta wait another turn and people are taking damage, and it's just chaos. Speaking of which, more things. Chaos Burst, 3 health, deal an amount of damage to a single ranger equal to the number of cards in their hand. If their hand is empty, they must discard the top card of their deck. This is a threat level of 2 because you'll be able to see it coming, you'll be able to plan for it, and simply enough, if you just have 1 card in your hand, which playing as a solo player, not a problem at all. This is actually probably the reason why I put it at a level 2 threat, because it's just not hard for me to deal with. Yes, I have to figure it out, I have to work with it, I have to kind of manipulate my hand and to figure out who it's going to target and the least amount of cards and things along that ways, but it's really not that bad at all. Like, you could really knock this down to 1 health. Do not knock it down to 0. Do not get yourself no cards in your hand, because you don't want to be discarding that top card either. At the very least, 1 simple easy damage, which of course you're going to draw your 1 shield card guaranteed every time, is better than taking a maximum amount of damage to this thing. So pretty cool. Love the art. Love the concept. It's not that scary. Next, going into Total Mayhem, 3 health, fast keyword, so it's going right to the front of the line. Deal 1 damage to each ranger, increase that damage by 1 for each panicked location. So I'm popping that as, sorry about that, I'm popping this as a threat level of 1. That's, at most, this is going to do 5 damage if you're playing Last Stand rules, so it's like all 4 would be panicked, plus 1 for 5. If you're not playing Last Stand rules, then it's a maximum total of 4 damage, 3 being panicked plus the 1 here. It's really not that difficult either. This is probably my least worried card out of all of the Chaos Putty deck. It's also fast, so it's going to go right to the front regardless of anything. If you're only fighting foot soldiers, then at that point in the game, nothing is panicked, so it's only dealing 1 damage, which is sad, pathetic, and like, I don't even have to deal with that. So a lot of what you see right here with the Chaos Putties is a lot about setting up. You see the card, it's going to trigger, you know what it is. There are things that you can do to prepare for it to not make it as scary. And lastly, Forced Frenzy. This card is terrifying because that mouth is huge and Zach is trying to hit it with the axe. I think it's Zach, might be Adam, I'm really not too sure. Doesn't matter, this is a 3 health, fast keyword card. One ranger must discard 1 random card from their hand. If it's an attack, so you'll know that after it's discarded, deal 2 damage to another ranger, otherwise drain 1. It's fast, I think this is like one of like only a few other fast cards within the Chaos Putties deck, so it's going to go to the front, it's going to cause problems, it's going to be annoying. It's definitely a threat level of 4 because of the fact that it does damage, drains energy, it causes you to discard cards. It does all types of bad things to it. Maybe not all at once, but it's still there, and it's still something that the players have to deal with. It's, man, I hate, you know that this goes up and it's going to be immediately guarded by something. So you're not going to have any way in order to get around it. So do what you can, figure it out, try to get rid of Force Frenzy as fast as you can. There's only one of these in the deck. So once you find it and destroy it, you're good. Yeah, at least for that battle. Winged Alien Creatures, Tenga Warriors. As a wedding gift to his sister and new brother-in-law, Rito planted Tenga eggs on the moon and gave Zed and Rita their own Tenga army. These bird-like creatures immediately became loyal to the couple and replaced the Putty Patrol. Labeled as being the fiercest warriors in the universe, this flock of foul-feathered fowls frequently faced off against the Rangers, using their super strength and flight ability to wear down the teens until whatever monster showed up to fight them next. The Tengas are foot soldier class enemies within Power Rangers Heroes of the Grid. As mentioned before with all of the other foot soldiers from this video, you defeat a card that's in the battlefield and you would be able to destroy a Tenga from the location. That is one experience that you would then gain as a team towards your next Zord, or ultimately the Megazord. The Tengas are connected to two different locations, the first being the shopping mall, which has a maximum of only 4 figures, and this area would panic. Its special ability is at the start of each battle in this location, the lead ranger deals 1 damage to an enemy card of their choice. Got a positive effect right here. The next is the Stone Quarry, where a massive amount of 7 figures can fit here before it's finally panicked. Its special ability at the start of each battle in this location, 1 ranger suffers 2 damage, and that is your negative effect from the 2 locations. Within the Tenga's 10 card deck, 3 of them are 2 health and 7 of them are 3 health. And keywords are broken down to 5 being blank, 3 are fast, and 2 have guard. They look fierce, they sound awful, they really are not. And keep in mind, these are Tenga Warriors, G-A. In the movie, they're Tengu Warriors, G-U. It's a different spelling, even though it's basically exactly the same creature. But hey, what can you do? First thing we have are Deadly Talons, 2 health, fast keyword cards. This is immediately going to go to the front and just do whatever it does. Deal 3 damage, threat level of 1. Anything with this low of damage that doesn't really do anything else to me is kind of like a whatever point again. As mentioned before earlier in the video, again, early versions of Heroes of the Grid, like way back in like 2018 when this game was brand new and everything like that, you didn't have that many abilities in order to deal with damage, to counter damage, to really set yourself up for something great once damage came in. Now, because of the way of all the different mechanics and the way that each of the Rangers function and things along that ways, you almost welcome cards like this because they do the damage at you and that gives you an excuse to play reactions and things like that that just come back and knock things out easily on the field without you having to really do too much else or waste a Ranger turn. Next is Piercing Screech. For some reason, I like saying Shriek or something along that ways with this card, but it's Screech. 3 health, guard keyword. Each Ranger must discard 1 card from their hand. This is a threat level of 3 normally. In solo mode, I would actually probably say like high priority 4 or something along that ways. I'm going to keep it at 3 though for this. For solo mode, this is terrible because again, it's each Ranger must discard 1 card. So in my hand of 7 cards, I draw like 2 from each Ranger. So I've already lost about half of the cards that I had in my hand, which is terrible. As far as, you know, normal 3, 4, 5 player game, this isn't the worst thing. And because it's guarded, you can always go in and hit it really quickly. So you're not losing a card that maybe you may need at some point. So keeping this under 3, I think is fair for it. Because it's something that needs to get off the board, you know, in a pretty decent amount of time. It could really wreck you in solo mode though. Next we have Fly Away. Of course they're birds. This is what they're going to do. 3 health, no keywords on it. Move 1 Tenga Warrior from this location to the next location clockwise that is not panic. Then flip this card face down. It is not considered defeated. So it's kind of like a regrow ability of sorts. Well, regrow goes where you are, but then it would like move to somewhere else if it was panicked. Or the no figure limit, I should say. So this is one where it's like you have a Tenga and he's running away scared. So he just leaves the battle. He's gone. He's completely gone from it, whatever. And then the card just flips face over and that's it. Nothing else happens. You don't gain any experience. Yes, the Tenga is gone, but it's to the next non-panicked area, which means that it could possibly panic. You want to be able to clip their wings and keep them grounded in order to take out these Tengas before they start flying around the board like crazy, spreading themselves out a little bit too much and causing more locations to panic than what you need. Oh, and Flyaway is a threat level of 2. I completely forgot to mention that through the whole thing, even though it was popped up anyway and you were able to see it, mainly because you don't really want this to trigger in order to spread the Tengas around, but at the same time, if it does go off, maybe it's a better position for you because that's one less foot soldier you got to deal with if you're fighting a boss. Let's finish with a swarm attack, shall we? I love this art. This is really cool for the Tenga Warriors. 3 health, deal 1 damage, increases damage of 1 for each foot soldier in the location. We know that, hooray, hurrah, and all that in between. That is a threat level of 3, as I would always say for these, because it could go either way. You may have something that's a lot of foot soldiers within this particular location. Thus, swarm attack is doing a massive amount of damage. This could be the only foot soldier in this location. Thus, it's doing 2 damage. So it's kind of an interesting scale that way when it comes to swarm attack, because it can either, again, be really awful or really doable. So 3 will be what I keep it at. And there you have it. A bunch of foot soldiers from Power Rangers Heroes of the Grid, broken down into their cards and various strategies about them. There are still more foot soldiers out there for you to discover, and I will be covering them later on as I kind of see what new stuff is being announced for Heroes of the Grid. There is a RenCon that is coming in June that will explain more stuff that's coming out. Hopefully we'll be able to see, like, I would love to see Jungle Fury. I would love to see anything really for Power Rangers Heroes of the Grid coming out. I'm just very excited for it. But depending on what that shows will determine what I cover next for the villains, whether that be more monsters, more bosses, theming stuff together, doing all Zeo, doing all Dino Thunder, which I actually can do, or I can do more foot soldiers in that case. Speaking of things coming up or what it is that is happening next, I will be doing a full session for you guys in the near future. Generally 3-part episodes here on YouTube. If you're a member or a Patreon subscriber, you will get the entire thing day 1 straight out. And I will be covering Dark Horde, which is scenario 6 for Power Rangers Heroes of the Grid, utilizing all of the foot soldiers that I just talked about within this episode in order to like see what they all do together and kind of like overwhelm my Rangers and whatnot. I'm not 100% sure what Rangers it is that I'm going to be playing for that yet. I'll have to figure that out a little bit later. But it should be a fun one. It's also interesting because I believe they just released another scenario recently that is all about being overwhelmed by foot soldiers, which I thought was pretty cool. In order not to miss any future Power Rangers Heroes of the Grid action or any other fun video I put out for you to enjoy, be sure you are subscribed to the Home Gamer Dad. If you wish to support the channel even further, there are ways to do that down in the description section below. If you don't have any of these foot soldiers at all and you're looking to add them to your collection, there are links in the description section where if you use those links to purchase thus, sets and whatnot, it goes a long, long, long way to helping the channel. Very much appreciated for anybody out there that does that. There are also additional ways to support the channel in the description section. I mentioned memberships and Patreons, but really when it comes down to it, your view, your like, your share, your comment, all of that is what means the most to me, because that's the stuff that's going to help Home Gamer Dad grow and give me the opportunity to make more breakdowns, more sessions, and more information to you guys for Power Rangers Heroes of the Grid, for Mission Critical, for any of the other games that I happen to play that you enjoy. Thank you all so much again. I hope you guys let me know what you think of these foot soldiers down in the comment section below. Which ones have you played? Which ones do you like? Do you agree with my ranking? Do you disagree? Things along that ways. Can't wait to see that. I want to read about all of that information that you guys have that you want to give me. So until all that happens, take care of yourselves and each other. We are family forever, gaming together, and I will see you guys in the next one. Have a good one. Later, everyone.